Sarah. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for asking me on to come talk.
Absolutely. I've been following you on Twitter for a while, so I was very excited when you agreed to do this interview. So I was curious, what got you into TTRPGs?
Um, it was more my university experience and like sixth form, which if people who are listening who are not in the UK, it's like the 2 years of school before university or college. Um, yeah, I started playing more actively then and made friends and especially university as well. Really got into it then. I did have like an experience before that in high school though with Dungeons and Dragons, and I think it was fourth edition at the time. So opinions on fourth edition aside,
Yeah.
the group itself wasn't like a very good group.
Mm,
I was the only at the time female presenting person there at the table, and yeah, it was rough playing a female character who was like kind of made to be a damsel in distress for all of the teenage boys to rescue
ooh, fun.
time and time again, which was a lot, and it kind of put me off for a while. And
Mhm.
then a partner that I had before I went to university got me back into playing and was like, try again.
Mhm.
We've got a group that we think you'll gel really well with, and yeah, it all kind of spiraled from there, and since then it has become like very much like a big part of my life, just tabletop in general.
Right. What also got you into like actually working at different TTRPG companies? 'Cause I know.
um it was kind of luck. I think a lot of it was to do, like, obviously there's an element of luck, and I spent a year before I started really writing stuff for TTRPGs, kind of being active on the disability front of the community, being very proactive with tweeting and things. Um, and it hadn't really crossed my mind to make my own content because I was just like, I don't think I have like the skill or the talent to do that kind of thing. And there was like an offhand comment somebody made on a reply who was being really bitter about something I tweeted to do with representing disabled people better. And
Yeah.
they were like, well, why don't you just make it yourself then if like no one else can do it? And I was like, out of spite, I will now like start making things, um, which is a great motivator.
Hmm.
And since then, yeah, it really started to become like through the combat wheelchair and then through getting really invested in the Witcher role-playing game.
Hmm.
I really got into TTRPGs more from the kind of writing and creating front. And then I was very lucky because Art Games offered me my first job
Hmm.
doing something with them, so writing an adventure. And yeah, like having to make connections now as well, and working with putting my content out there really, I think, helped with getting companies to also realize that I was creating content, and then getting work through them as well.
Nice. Yeah, and content that people actually want to use. Like, there's a lot of people that would love to see themselves actually represented in the games that they play. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
what would you say is the your most proud of thing that you've created for TTRPGs?
Hands down, it's the combat wheelchair.
Hmm.
And I think it will always kind of be,
Hmm.
because it's like the first thing I really put out there, that took off in any aspect. So and the fact that I can add to it, and keep creating more things for it
Hmm.
as well, and seeing the other works it's inspired, whether that be people making D&D classes built around it, or characters for their games around it, or if they've taken the idea and put it into an entirely new game system, which I think is great. It's inspired a lot of other content from it, and with the first year birthday of the combat wheelchair coming up in August, I'm
Mhm.
releasing a bunch more things, and it has just been, it's always fun to work on and come back to, and I think like it will always kind of hold a very special place, and possibly, you know, will always be my favorite thing that I've done.
How did you feel when you found out that that Heroforge added wheelchairs to their minis? Because I feel like after you released the combat wheelchair, that in general, that whole conversation sparked, and then suddenly they released wheelchairs. How did you feel when you saw those come up?
I think it had been like one of the things that they had for a while, like planned eventually to come into Heroforge. From having talked to them, they have a lot of projects that are just on back burners that get brought up as things go along. And you know, I think in some way that the conversations people were having about how important it is that we have wheelchair representation and disability representation in general really made them see the need for it, and you know, that they could offer a service that a lot of other miniature services don't really offer. Like a lot of other places have very stock standard wheelchairs, whereas they've made with their engine that they use to tailor the miniatures, you can make it very personalized. Like already we can get gear on the chairs, you can slant the wheels as well, and change aspects of it. And you know, also with the new coloring service that they offer on their minis as well, you can get it in color, which is great, especially for disabled people who use wheelchairs, who possibly can't paint miniatures themselves and can't really afford to commission someone to pay their miniatures. So, you know, having a service where they can have a wheelchair using character mini and then also have it be given to them in color as well, I think is great. And it's great to see Heroforge even just like putting it out there and not doing anything more with it. They've got a lot more other plans. I was brought on to talk to them about that and consult, which was great. So getting to hear the plans that they have for making these chairs more personalized is, and I'm really excited to see what they do in the future with it.
Absolutely. When it comes to the combat wheelchair, you mentioned making classes and stuff. What is your favorite class or background you've made so far for the chair?
There's one background so far, which is the Paralympian, which is really fun. I have played a few characters with that kind of background. It really ties in the character and the chair a lot more, and their subclasses as well can also influence the Paralympian background. And I do have some more ideas for backgrounds in the works, beyond just, you know, that kind of sports angle. And with the subclasses, my favorites are, oh man, this is going to be difficult to choose. I really enjoyed making and putting out the Way of the Pandemonium Monk, which is building up kinetic energy, removing the chair and putting little talismans on it. So anytime they rattle or move, you build up kinetic energy, which you can then spend your key on to make really big booming noises to throw people back,
Nice.
and things like that. They're really fun. I really enjoyed that subclass. I also really enjoyed the more recent subclass, which is going to be coming out in August, which is the Sorcerer, which is called the Hemomancer, so it's blood magic. And it's there are two paths that you can go down. So you can either be like kind of like a surgeon healer kind of character, or you can be this really like fiery, passionate, almost monster-like character that can, like, you know, do these cool like cutting and ripping effects. And it allows you to actively target specific areas of a target creature's body, and cause effects that kind of not just inflict damage types on that target creature, but also as well supports the rest of the players, because I've always felt that sorcerers should be like a little bit more, there should be a combat kind of path, but also that, you know, supports the other players as well. So kind of keeping that. and I've been having a lot of fun with the new wizard class that I'm making. Can't say too much, but it's to do with using your, oh my gosh, I forgot the words today, familiar. And in the same way that a beast master ranger has like more control over the beast that they are bonded with, the same with this wizard and their familiar and how it interacts with the chair. Mimics are involved, and I'm really excited for that. And my other favorite is the Blood Hunter that I did for Matt Massa, the Order of the Psiphonic, which is about using psi energy and chronic pain and fatigue influence your magic and the abilities that your character has as well.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed looking at all the release content so far. I've been trying to work on putting more of that stuff into like the NPCs in my personal D&D home game. So tell me about your tell me about your decision to release the combat wheelchair for free on Twitter.
I've always kind of had this thing about releasing my personal projects where I don't think people should have to pay for content that I believe should have been in the core rulebook from the start. And Artalsorian kind of supported that with the Cyberchair when I worked on Cyberpunk Red with them as well. The Cyberchair rule set is completely free to download and use in your games. So having that was just really important. And I think as well, because a lot of disabled people as well can't always necessarily afford supplement books, especially for at a price where it would be, you know, paying me for the year's worth of time and investment that I put into it. And I feel that I shouldn't be charging people for that. And you know, it's to really, like I said, like that whole, I don't think I should be charging for things that I'm really adamant should just be in a core rulebook to begin with. You know, and I wanted to make it accessible to everyone, and to make sure that anyone can use it at their table. So yeah, like that's kind of my main stance with releasing my own content for free.
Wonderful. And you said you can find most of the stuff on your Twitter. Is that where?
Yeah. So Twitter, my pinned tweet is always the most recent versions of the combat wheelchair. At the moment it's 2.1. And it's on my, I do release stuff on Patreon, but it's always linked through my Twitter. Some of the stuff is behind obviously patron tiers, but with stuff like when it was my wheelchair using character Talinoran's birthday, I put up a whole bunch of free content for people for the combat wheelchair, including short stories and Talon's NPC sheet as well, for people to use. So there's free stuff, and there's also like Patreon exclusive stuff, but that usually I wait a few months and then release it publicly for free anyway. It's usually just they're paying to have behind the scenes, get to be able to play test it or get it a little bit earlier than the general public does.
Awesome. Is there anything you can say about any upcoming works, whether it's private or with the company that you work for?
Yeah, so there's the Disability in the Witcher TTRPG that's coming out at the end of June. And it has been a massive project. It's standing at the moment well over 100 pages, and that's without the artwork inlaid in. And I've been starting to get some of the artwork back now. It's great to see it all come together. And it will be like the combat wheelchair. It will be something that I update frequently as rules change, and especially as, you know, new editions of the Witcher role-playing game I'm sure will eventually come out, that I will tailor the rules then. But yeah, that's like the big kind of personal project I'm working on. There's the 1-year anniversary of the combat wheelchair, in which a whole bunch of free content is getting released throughout August. Even though the birthday is on the 12th of August, just the whole month is going to be like a celebration thing, with with a couple of pieces of content every week. And then there's also some upcoming stuff that's coming out this year. There's 3 months, I think, until Pathfinder 2nd edition, Lost Omens Grand Bazaar comes out, and that has a whole prosthetic section and disability aids section, including wheelchairs that I've made for Pathfinder, and an NPC as well who's also disabled, and how you would interact with that character, and things you can involve in your game to put that character in, and there is also, I think it's coming out this year, but it's Book of Tales from the Witcher TTRPG, which is a whole bunch of adventures. I wrote one of those adventures. I don't think I can say what the name of the adventure is yet, but like it's a really big one, and I had to write so many NPCs. Most of it was me making NPCs and then having to find some way to put them in, and that was really, really fun. And they're very like kind of open beginning and open-ended stories, so like you can slot them into a campaign pretty easily, which I think is a great way to like kind of lay out one of those books with multiple adventures in. And there's like some really interesting characters and concepts. There's some horror stuff, there's some just humorous adventures, and then there's some very stereotypical Witcher adventures where a bad thing happens, but sometimes there's a good ending, sometimes a bad. And there is Tome of Chaos, which is the new book for new magical spells for The Witcher, and I wrote the only adventure in it, and I'm really excited about that. I can't say a lot, but Art Alsorium were very supportive when I asked about bringing disability into kind of the main focus of the adventure, and how fairy tales kind of are embroiled with ableism to an extent, and how that would affect a story based on fairy tales in the Witcher setting, which fairy tales are real in that setting. So getting to do that in one of my favorite settings was really cool, and Art Alsorium was super supportive of it, which was great. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything except for Starfinder. I just remembered a Starfinder that I did a version of wheelchairs and hover chairs for them. So Starfinder is like the sci-fi version of Pathfinder, and I think that's coming out in the book Tech Revolution. So that's super exciting, and I think that's also coming out this year, maybe towards the end of this year, but it has been announced, so I can speak on it. But yeah, that's everything I think for now, personal and stuff that is announced and going to be published.
Right. You do a lot of work on The Witcher, and I know on Twitter you also do threads of Witcher lore. What would you say is like your favorite thing about The Witcher, that like why you love it so much?
About it in general, it's like the main story, I think, is just really nice. You have this character who typically, a lot of people when they see Geralt of Rivia, they think that kind of very masculine, very macho character, and sometimes fans as well have kind of glossed over the depth of Geralt, and kind of go with, he's like a really manly man, he's really tough and like monster fighter, but he's actually really soft and sweet. And the story, I joke often that The Witcher 3 is just Dad Simulator 2015, because that's what it is. That the story and your choices as Geralt, and how you choose to raise Ciri and either encourage her or chide her for things, has a result on how the story itself ends, with a good, bad, or neutral ending. So getting to experience like a really cool world where you think that a lot of the characters would be these kind of emotionally cut off, grizzled people, and seeing it kind of flipped on its head. Where it's about found family and growing as a person, and realizing that Geralt's been basically told all his life that he has no emotions, so he just kind of acts the part because that's what he thinks he has to do. But actually, him coming to terms with his emotions and things like that is just really cool. Like, obviously what people will say to this that there are problems in The Witcher, and there are a lot of problems in both books and the media representation, but it is at its core like a very touching story, and I've always very much enjoyed that. And the characters are fun, and the character growth is great as well. And getting to play around with a dark fantasy setting, which does have some good in it, and you know that it really like highlights like these really nice good feel good story parts as well. And just the entire kind of lore as well, like the effort that's clearly been put into building a whole continent of like a load of countries and then giving it all a history and how everything connects is really impressive. And I've always enjoyed that in fantasy, whether it's high or low. So yeah, I've always just really enjoyed it. The Witcher is just super special to me.
On Twitter, you've pointed out several times like Geralt's chronic pain and just any Witcher's like chronic pain. Is there specifically something about that? Like, is that one of the things that endeared you to the character? Or I know that's a thing that you've been making actively like point out that because it gets a little bit overlooked in the books.
Yeah. It always kind of stood out to me when Geralt would complain of chronic pain. Because it was like, oh, like me. And at that point, I was about 2021 when I first started reading the Witcher novels. And it was just very comforting to have this character who was, you know, up to a point presented as very like capable and strong, and like then him being essentially knocked down low with these injuries, and then how he has to navigate his life with these injuries. And the fact that he was still shown as capable and still shown as the hero of the story was just great. Like I hadn't seen that so much in other pieces of media, and getting to, you know, see a character kind of go through it the way that I did. I was at a point where I was very frustrated with my own chronic pain. And getting to read a book where the main character was very clearly angry at the beginning at his situation, and then him coming to terms with it and his friends helping him along the way really spoke to me and really helped me a lot through it. And I know it gets overlooked, and I think it's just because people don't consider chronic pain a disability or don't realize that it's a disability when it is. So, you know, when I made that thread, it was also to hopefully get people to realize that if you have chronic pain, you are disabled. Disabled is such like a broad term of a word. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that because we don't talk about disability as often as we should.
Right.
So getting to have those conversations and make people aware that, you know, if you've got chronic pain and chronic fatigue to the point that it affects your everyday life, then yes, you are disabled, and it's okay to be disabled. So you know, having Geralt kind of be a representation of my own experience for me on some level really kind of endeared me to him. And because I did like the character initially to begin with, I kind of liked him through his interactions with everyone else. But then when it was kind of him coming to terms with his own disability, whether he was discussing that with friends or just through inner thoughts, that's when like I was very much endeared to him, I think. And that's when I was like, yeah, he's now like one of my favorite characters from the series. So yeah, I think that's kind of where the whole Witcher, I guess, like fixation for me and my work really comes from.
Awesome. You do amazing things. I love all the stuff you do on Twitter. You're shouting out people who are doing important work. You also have a Twitch channel. Can you tell me a little bit about your Twitch?
So I have my personal Twitch, which I do use from time to time, and I do plan on using it more in the future. It's the same as like my name everywhere, which is just Mustang's Art, just to keep everything simple.
Right.
But yeah, I do plan on using it more in future because people want to ask more questions about my work process. And I was like, well, why don't I stream from time to time working on subclasses and things so people can see where my mind goes and what I have to take into consideration. So I plan on using that more. And through streaming, I kind of realized how I could, through Let's Play, especially when you see live play games of D&D and stuff. Because at the beginning, I kind of thought it was just like one kind of unified layout that you see on Critical Role, like the older episodes and the older with official Wizards of the Coast stream, like for example, like Dice Camera Action or High Rollers, that kind of thing. And through being in the disabled community, I realized, oh wait, no, you can actually have live captions, and this is how you would do it, and this is how you can lay out your streams, so it's easier for people, to never have the captions over a person's like mouth in any way, because people lip read, and I hadn't considered that before. So through using Twitch, I kind of realized, how accessible you can make streams, and it kind of made me realize, okay, well, a lot of these streams just aren't making things accessible, which led to me founding another Twitch group, which is Heroes Without Limits, which is H Without Limits on Twitter and on Twitch as well. And so everything there is a community basically founded and built on disabled people and neurodivergent people and chronically ill people, whether these things be visible or non-visible. And we basically run games, and all of the producers and everything are also disabled, chronically ill, neurodivergent. And we put out games and things, and I since had to kind of step back as a producer just because so much work and I couldn't do it with my job anymore. So I've remained as the founder, but the Discord is there as well. We help other disabled people find games with other disabled people, just like-minded people. So yeah, like it's kind of built this community through me realizing how streams could be a bit more accessible. And it definitely, like, it's always the first thing I think of now whenever I plan on doing a stream is, okay, I need to go and get the live captioners and make sure the borders and everything are neat, and make sure my face when I talk isn't like, cut off or blurred. So yeah, that has kind of changed how I've approached streams, and for the better, because more people can enjoy them. And they don't have to rely on waiting for a transcript all the time, or just being able to watch streams. So yeah, like I think this community has really like kind of helped with making people realize that streams can and should be accessible, and making them inaccessible is kind of a fault of the person who is streaming, and we should be doing better, especially when there's a lot of free software out there that allows you to make things accessible.
Yeah, no, when I started streaming, I looked up several different live captioning services, and I have a free one that I use every time. They're pretty easy to find and pretty accurate, so long as you don't mumble too much. Very nice to see the accessibility aids become more and more on everything: Twitch, TikTok, Twitter, all that stuff. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me and for answering some questions. Where is the place everyone can find you if they, want to go check out all your stuff?
Pretty much Twitter, which is Mustangsart, Mustangsart. I just had to make sure I knew how to spell my own name then. But I pretty much do everything there, or promote everything there anyway, with links to where you can find the stuff. Combat Wheelchair, as always, will be pinned tweet, and it takes you to a Google Drive, so don't be alarmed if it suddenly opens your Google Drive up. It's supposed to. It's a folder. There is a plain text version, a open dyslexic font version, and then there are 2 versions of the sheet for keeping track of things that are on your Combat Wheelchair, just to make the mechanics a little easier and more streamlined. And pretty much if you have any questions, I do have an email that is open on my Twitter bio as well. It's like at the very bottom of my Twitter bio. So if you have any questions or want to ask, I could clarify certain rules better, things like that, you can ask me on Twitter, or you can just send me a private email and I will get back to you. But yeah, pretty much Twitter is where I am most of the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
No, thank you for asking me on. It's always nice to chat.
And this is for our charity week. Our June is all of our proceeds that we get is going towards the Innocence Project, which do amazing work at giving people, the ability to get innocent people out of jail and to start on a new second chance of life. So please check out our description and our website, Twitter, all that to find the links to donate to the Innocence Project. Thank you again so much, Sarah.
Thank you for asking me on. It was great.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching.
You can check out our website for all the content we produce.
Clicking all those YouTube buttons makes it so you see more content from myself and the other amazing creators at Kai's Corner Productions. All donations help us produce more stuff like that for you.
See you guys in the next one. Peace.